Welcome everybody to the Casually Hardcore Podcast. Chris throwing me off, so I'm trying to do the intro. Professional. Episode 52. Joining us this week, we got Steve from the Freelancer Codex podcast, just having rocked 113 episodes, the longest running Anthem podcast in history. I mean, like, I think we could, in the universe, like, in existence, you know,
all the places,
and all the things. So we asked Steve to come on, and he agreed because we want to be talking about Anthem then versus now. Anthem is a game that still exists. Anthem is a game that, depending on what company, it almost feels like we're talking politics sometimes when you bring up Anthem, because people have strong feelings on it, and so it's going to be interesting. This is going to be hopefully a fun show and a great conversation, and so we're going to kind of walk through where Anthem is today, where it's been, and more. Steve, why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself and what actually got you podcasting in the first place, and what kept you around? Because despite everything that kind of just, we were talking in the pre-show, that really befell Anthem in the first couple of months of the game itself, even leading up to the Jason Shriver article itself, which really kind of just, it was, when you're down, it's, you know, that probably hurt the community more than anything else. What kept you going?
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's a hard question.
We asked the hard
I'll
one.
I'll try to keep my long answer pretty short. So first of all, I'm Steve. Me, a buddy of mine, Devin, and my brother Mike. We started the podcast after we saw Anthem first showing off in EA Play 2017. So that was the first glimpse. 2018.
2017, E3 2017. Yeah,
it's been so long ago. So then we started there because the first thing that we saw, you know, these javelins flying around this area. Like, we know now that it was, you know, it would have changed a lot from what we saw then. But just the imagery of the javelin jumping off of Fort Tarsis for the first time, going into the waterfalls. It was kind of one of those moments that you get in trailers where you're just kind of like blown away.
It blows you away, and you're like, this is a game changer. It felt like it set a whole new like line in the sand for games.
Yeah, especially for games as a service. You know, we anticipated this was going to be something that was supposed to compete with Destiny. I never threw around the term as you know the Destiny killer, because I don't think any game kills any other game. That's just not how it works.
I think it almost dooms games. Chris, how many WoW killers have there been?
All of them.
Yeah.
But it's something that really caught our attention because it just looked gorgeous. I'm not a huge BioWare fan myself. I don't have the long history of people that have played Mass Effect or Dragon Age, so I didn't have what I call the BioWare baggage. So I wasn't expecting, you know, romance and all this other stuff. So when that wasn't in there, it didn't like stop me. But I can understand how it would turn off a lot of BioWare fans, because that's a huge aspect of what those games are and why people fell in love with them so much. So we said, hey, we talk about games a lot. We play them all the time. We talk about them. Let's just record this. We'll throw it out there. If people listen, they listen. If not, it's at least a way to get together and just chat. I think that's probably how most podcasts start. I don't think anyone gets into podcasting think that they're going to like make any money from it. So that's how we started. And the thing we said, if we are going to do this, if we are going to start it, we're not going to stop until the servers shut down, no matter what happens.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
We're going to keep going. And we kind of made that commitment in the beginning.
Was there blood? Like, you know, it's like, all right, guys.
We did. We drew blood. We spit on our hands. We shook hands. We buried like a doll in the backyard. So we decided we're going to do this. Yeah. And you know what? We're going to cover it. I listen to podcasts all the time.
Right.
So I really enjoy that long form of content. Because for my work, I drive a lot. So I have lots of time just to listen. And I really enjoy listening to people's theories. I like, you know, the discussion. Because no matter how many times you hear the same discussion over and over again, it's a little bit different from someone else's perspective. And it's nice to get other perspectives out there. So I enjoy podcasting. We figured we'd do it. We saw a game that appealed to all of us. So we're like, hey, let's do this and let's just keep going with it. And I'm actually glad that we have. I mean, we started when we had only a 7-minute trailer, and we did a year of content based on a 7-minute trailer, which sounds insane, and it really is. But we told ourselves, hey, let's learn how to do this for the first year, and maybe by the time the game comes out, we'll kind of have a flow.
Yeah.
We'll kind of feel comfortable doing it, because doing content creation, it's hard. It takes some getting used to. Like the first time, like sitting in my house, not looking at anyone, it's hard to even hit the record button and not feel nervous, right? I don't know if it was similar for you guys when you started.
It always does. It always does. It's the same approach that in advice we give to tanking, within any kind of like Trinity-based game. Like there's a nervousness, there's an apprehension, there's a, what am I doing? I don't have this as an experience. And unfortunately, the really only way that you can get over that is by kind of jumping through the fire and the flames. Your story about Anthem is very similar to my story, but with Final Fantasy XIV. I saw the trailer. I went out and bought a mixing board that day, and I said I have to talk about it, and started recording it. And even the fact that that game failed, I think there's a lot of connection I have with Anthem and with Final Fantasy XIV. I was hanging out on Dak's stream. He's one of the community managers for Anthem, and he's streaming 14 last night, and we were having just a great conversation. But there's a lot of, I think, in my world, for as weird as my brain is, like 14 failed, and they restored it. Like I see so much potential in Anthem, same potential I even saw in 1.0, and I'm like, I wonder if they could do it again. I wonder if this can be something that has a redemption story, a lesson learned. There's some differences in that regards, but I started podcasting that same way. And then
I think there's always the desire to see like the little dog come from behind and win. That's how most sports movies are, right? That's
if
what
they
you want
win.
to see.
If they win.
If they win.
Nobody cares about the losers. Like it's like there's no movie made about the underdog who lost.
Right.
It's like, and that happens more often than not. That's why it becomes such a great, this great thing happened. This underdog won. So it just depends on that. Like on the one, I'll do the rest of the intro here, and then I want to get your thoughts real quick on the fall. Like obviously when the game launched and all the how it was on that content, and you and your team who spent that time on the game. But let's go ahead and do the business side of it all. Anyway, guys, if you missed our last episode, we had Rook from Bird of Chess on, episode 51. Fantastic. You can find it on YouTube and iTunes and Google Play, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever podcasts pretty much can be consumed. We'll have Freelancer Codex Steve's and all his links in the description below, so you can follow him on Twitter as well as on YouTube and more. You'll have a dedicated website that you have all your podcasts and stuff on as well, right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, make sure we'll have a link to that for you guys. We also want to thank our partnership with Exit Lag. We have a link in the description. Use the code DOWORK for 20% off and you get 3 free days. You can try it out for yourself to see if it reduces your ping and helps enjoy your game if you're especially playing these online multiplayer games. I also want to say thanks to Kenneth, Leland, Jorge, and Kyle for being members of the workforce over on YouTube. Thanks for supporting the podcast, the stream, and the content. I am freezing cold in this room, by the way. I'm just going to keep ripping my hands. So before the business side, now with all that concluded, we can have a lot of fun. The Jason Shriver article was a gut punch. Like it was, when I was looking at the game, I was like, they can fix all of this. Like there is fun here, like I'm actually having fun. But I want more, and I'm like, okay, well, that might be just a function of the game as a service. The article itself revealed, I think, a lot, and that was really disheartening. How do you take it? How did your team take it? Especially almost like as we come up on the 1-year anniversary of the launch.
Yeah, so So the Jason article was interesting because we actually got to know a lot of the devs. So it's different when you have like a personal relationship with people that that are being talked about.
Yeah.
Because really, like, man, that sucks if that's how things are going on at the studio. It sucks that it's being run that way, right? And from like an outside perspective, like you hear about crunch and you hear about all these things, the mismanagement and how people like things weren't getting done and decisions just weren't being made. Mm-hmm. Like it hurts because you become invested in a thing and you don't want to see you don't want to see behind the curtain. You don't want to see under the refrigerator where everything gets swept under the rug and things go to die, right? So it's kind of hard. And as a consumer of the game, you can either make the decision, it's like, well, things are run this way, I'm going to leave the game, or just not going to care about it. Or, you have to make a decision as a consumer what you're going to do with that information. We decided, you know what, there's a lot of people that, we like on this game. We want to see it, pull through. I mean, we had examples of things like No Man's Sky that were able to come through, and they were able to overcome. They did it in a little bit different way, and it took them a while, but that did happen. So you have examples of like, okay, things can be turned around. Let's keep covering it. Let's keep playing the game. Let's provide our feedback as a community to how we want the game to be shaped. If they listen, that's awesome. If they don't listen, at least we're doing our part. I mean, we could have just left and we could have found another game to cover, but it's like, well, like, we really want the game to succeed. And maybe that's just us, like, wishful thinking, wanting something to happen so bad, but it won't happen, and you just can't let go. I mean, possibly that's part of it. Maybe that's why.
That blood pack essentially, like, was that revisited at that time?
Oh, and that definitely was, because that's something that, we made a decision that we're going to do it, and we can either just, say, no, we're going to give up, or we can do it. So we decided, no, we're going to keep going. We're going to follow the story, because the story is interesting. I enjoyed the game, the game industry, because the stories are interesting. How games get made is interesting to me, because it's almost an impossible task to get these things done, appease the mass market, and make something that's, blows up so big that, you can sustain more development, because it's hard. Most games cost millions and millions of dollars to make, and a lot of them don't recoup that. So following the story is interesting, and I still really enjoy major aspects of Anthem. Like the flight is awesome. Like, the animation team killed it on the animations for the javelins. There's no other game that gives you that feeling of flight and the movement, unless, I don't know, you could argue that playing something like Ace Combat gives you that feeling, but you're flying a jet. This is flying an exosuit, and you're killing a bunch of creatures in the wild, and you're shooting a bunch of outlaws, so it's a little bit different. So there's a core there that can be built upon that can make it a great game, and that's what we're waiting for. That's what we're hoping for. So we're providing feedback. We have our small community trucking along. We have the people that are like, yeah, keep doing this, because you know what, there is a small group of people that enjoy Anthem, and we just want to see that grow, and we want to see those people get the game that we all kind of expected in 2017.
Yeah, I think that's the real kind of key. When you go look at what they tried to create, it's incredible. In fact, when you go, like, I was playing last night, I was hanging out, like, watching live streams and just playing Anthem, because I'm still playing. Like, there is a core that I enjoy, and I'm just like, well, I mean, if they're going to turn this thing around, I'm going to be sitting on, like, an insane amount of coin. I'm going to be sitting on, like, I'm like, all right, I got all this cool stuff. I was there when it was horrible.
Right.
I have the same badge of honor within 14. It's like, I was there. I've got all the levels and all the tattoos and everything to prove it. I have a reduced subscription fee. Like, I was there in that regards. And so it's going to be interesting to see. And I hope they can turn it around. But as far as it goes, like, when I just run around free play, like, when I go run around free play, I go, if this was the game, and then you could, let's go do this mission, or here's all this event, and you put more freelancers just in free play, and you're just, buddies are popping in and out, and then you're going to a stronghold, or then you're doing whatever, like, that's the fun. And when you go and you say, like, between mission, like, there's so much just, like, downtime between mission and loading the next mission, etc. It's like, you cut all that out, and you just let me just go lay waste to outlaws and lay waste to the Dominion, and just, like, go crazy and nuts and start filling the world with cool stuff. I was like, I think that's what they were trying to do. And then it came down to, we can't do that by the time that we need to release it. So I'm hopeful that whatever they end up doing has that sense of, I'm just playing a game, I'm having fun, let's go nuts.
Yeah, having those options in free play would make a huge difference instead of going to back. Like, and thinking of when we talk about live service games, unfortunately, they just never have enough content for us in the beginning, and I really blame WoW for that. Like, when WoW first released, I mean, like, we've never seen anything that big, right? I mean, it was mind blowing at how big WoW was in the beginning. Like, the grind from 0 to 60 was ridiculously long. I mean, people would take months, to even get there.
Chris should be able to weigh in on that. Chris, you were there.
I mean, it was my first MMO, so I was massively inefficient. I did all the things that we recommend against. I got tied up in professions. I got tied up in exploring. I was grinding reputations before I was at cap. All the pitfalls, and so I mean, it was weeks of playtime before I was at cap. But like, it killed a lot of things at Blizzard too. So like when you look at the damage that this does to this team, just know that like at Blizzard, it wasn't easy. They were pulling people who were working on other projects to work on WoW immediately because servers were going down. The initial raids, when we first raided in WoW, hardcore progression raids, there were raids back then that would lag the entire dungeon server if more than one group pulled. So when you talked about world progression, there were world first races where the progression raid teams had to coordinate with each other whose turn it was to pull. Because if multiple raid groups pulled at the same time, it would crash the server. We had huge maintenance delays. We had huge, I mean, this is not DDoS attacks and things like that. This is just critical failure at too much success. I mean, there were just too many people and there was too little foresight because they said it'd be cool to build a game like this. It'd be neat.
And because of the success of it, like, you know, I'm really sad that we never got more, you know, Warcraft RTSs because of the popularity of WoW. But because that game was so big, you're like, man, what can all these other games do? And when they don't have that content to match, when you're like, hey, this is a MMO, or like, you know, you think of something like Destiny that, you know, was an MMO in the beginning, but they never wanted to say that. There just wasn't enough content to compete with that because also, you know, Blizzard was pretty mobile and they had pretty large team and a long time to do this on. So it just, like, when you don't have that content in Anthem and you're like, man, there's nothing here, and because there really isn't anything there in free play. So, you know, looking at that from that perspective, that there's not much to do and other people coming in and just like, they didn't have the time because they made the game in 18 months. So
I'm going to phrase an interesting question because I was given a Temtem card, you know, gift, and I'm going to hopefully be playing that this afternoon, and it's had server issues. But Temtem, as an MMO Pokemon game, you know, I mean, that's what it is. It launched, it's in early access, and they're labeling it as early access. If in any way possible, shape or form in these companies' minds, if they could launch these games in some form of that early access mindset, like you can buy it, it's this price. Note that it's early access, that there's problems. There's going to, you know, you're going to help us build this, shape this, fix this together, and that sets I think that sets a mental tone, because when you come in at a full price game, the greater majority of people who do not follow these games heavily, they're expecting a full price experience. You know, like I want to get in, I want to play the game, and when I can't, then I'm like, what did I just spend my money on? Like, why am I beta testing this game at a full price? You know, like, and do you think that would have benefited the overall impact that Anthem had at launch?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime you say, hey guys, this is early release, you put that disclaimer in the beginning, it changes your perception of the game, right? I mean, Steam's early access stuff, like Supergiant Games, they make Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre. They've got a game in early access right now, Hades, and, you know, they're working on the game, and you know that, hey, this thing might crash, this thing might be broken, but it sets that expectation. If we had that for Anthem, at least players would be like, okay, it's not, you know, it's not ready for where I want to play it or whatever. And then you get people that, you know, they'll just wait, or you get the people that want to jump in and make the game better and add their feedback. Mm-hmm. So that helps a ton. Plus it gives them time to like figure out what your player base actually wants, which is really hard to do. Especially, I know everyone says that, hey, you know, Anthem, you got to see what the Division did, you got to see what Anthem did, or what Destiny did. Mm-hmm. But, you know, development doesn't work that way, to where you can be so nimble that, hey, Destiny did this, let's change these core systems we've been working on for years to match that, right?
Right.
You know, they're in development sometimes a lot at the same time, and they don't really know what they're doing until, you know, things get released. But at least if you have feedback from the people that are playing your game early, you can kind of make those adjustments a little bit quicker, a little bit easier. Because otherwise it's like, you know, they had the whole, hey, we're not going to talk about Destiny. We don't want to, you know, mention Destiny as we develop this game. You know, ultimately that probably hurts you if you're not at least paying attention to the competition you're trying to go up against. Mm-hmm. But, you know, early access would make a huge difference. I mean, we'd probably still be in early access right now. Right. And that's fine. Yeah. I mean, Star Citizen's been in early access for how long? For like 140 years or something like that?
Fortnite's still in beta, so...
yeah.
and they make billions of dollars.
And it works for them. And it probably doesn't work for every studio, you know? And we can say, hey, you know, you should have done this. You should have done this. And it's hard to, from the outside, make those decisions. we can just say, hey, you should have done this and it would have been wildly successful, right? And we know that's not the case, but early access, it probably would have helped a lot. For sure their betas would have helped a ton. We only had a couple betas that were maybe a month out or so, and those were just that was just a slice of the game that we were going to get on launch, and that probably didn't tell them much.
It didn't, because like Chris is he hates Anthem like with a burning fire. I'm just teasing. His face is like, what? No, but his Chris was always like, well, what's the end game like? Like, we don't know. Like, once you finish the story, what am I doing? And nobody could really say for sure. They're like, well, we've got the strongholds. Like, are there raids? Like, we're not talking about that yet. Or, we're not talking. It's like, all right, well, okay. And then the roadmap was promising, but I'm really happy they paused the roadmap, because they identified that, like, okay, this thing needs serious work. But Chris, what would get you in that concept of Anthem, though? Like, what would get you now, like, to say, hey, I'm actually going to go play that? Because you were like, all right, I had fun playing the beta, but, like, I'm going to wait and see what happens.
I mean, the problem is that it's a great time to be a gamer. The problem is that there's 20 games a year that launch that each could be your only game all year, and they could hold your attention that long. And that's in addition to the ones from the year before and any you missed. I never played God of War. I could go back and have a blast. That's from 2018. Like, you can go back, and so, like, gaming is just so big that you have to not just be a good game. You have to not just be a great game. You have to be that thing that rises all the way to the top of somebody's priority list, or they just don't get there. So you have to have something unique. That's why you don't necessarily want to just copy what everybody else is doing. Obviously it'd be nice to be nimble enough to kind of say, oh, we want to do our version of that, but that takes time. I mean, WoW is coming out with Torghast Tower next expansion. That is literally just their version of Deep Dungeon out of Final Fantasy XIV, but it's 2 expansions later. I mean, it takes that long to say, okay, we see what they did. We don't want to just carbon copy it. We want to do our version with our taste and our flavor and our combat system, and then add that in. Okay, so you spend a whole expansion thinking about what that would even look like. Then you spend a whole expansion developing that. You're 4 years behind the ball to add a feature. So you have to just get it right the first time, and Anthem didn't for me. So it's not anything that they did necessarily horribly wrong. They just didn't rise to the very cream of that crop to get my time. I enjoyed every minute that I played Anthem leading up to the decision not to make it my main game. And that's where you see, like, people saying, oh, well, Anthem's dead. There's a lot of room between dead and great game. And Anthem is somewhere in between there. And so to anybody that's enjoying Anthem, that's awesome. And that's kind of my question to you is, like, well, what makes Anthem, what's the biggest thing you could lose? We all know how we could win, right? The game could turn around. It could be all worth it. You got in on the ground floor. That's an easy narrative to explain why somebody's still playing it. If you do play it and then the servers do shut down, what is the worst that could happen? Like, what would be your fear there?
I don't know that. I guess if they shut it down, the fear is like, oh man, look at how much time I wasted, right? That's the big fear ultimately. That when you don't want it to crash, but you see, this is hard because that's the biggest thing. The biggest fear is that they just shut it down, right? Yeah. They shut it down, it goes away, and then what? Okay, you pivot and you move on to the next thing. But it's like, oh.
Do you then, like, let's say that scenario actually played out? Do you, like, from a branding perspective and content creation, do you rename the podcast itself, or do you maintain that Freelancer Codex thing and to cover other games and to branch out? Because the thing you all have as a unique squad is you got 4 guys, friends, play games. That's always going to be something interesting and an interesting take.
Yeah, that I guess the thing that for me, like, I really have to be passionate about a game to really want to talk about it for that long. Like, in it,
yeah.
Because there's so many podcasts, there's so many content creators that you can go listen to that cover a lot of stuff, right? They don't do the deep dives. But is there something that, is coming out in the future? Like, hey, Godfall looks interesting for a lot of the same reasons that Anthem looked interesting for me, except now it's in a high fantasy setting. there's giant swords. You know, they said they're pulling inspiration for things like Brandon Sanderson's, like one of my favorite book authors that's out there. You know, that would be something like, hey, I could see myself getting into. But it's like, you know, at some point you have to say, okay, this could just be another Anthem. Like if you think of Counterplay Games that's creating Godfall, they created Duelist, which is a collectible card game on Steam that, you know, they've stopped supporting because when they switched publishers over to Bandai Namco, they took over the marketing and everything kind of went downhill for Duelist from there. You know, so there's like, okay, so if they had this game and support kind of stopped, like what stops them from doing the same thing to this next game that comes out?
Right.
So do we rebrand? We probably do. I mean, we do other stuff on the show. We just do a random, hey, let's talk. And then we do like our Dungeons & Dragons show that we do. And you know what? Dungeons & Dragons is never going to shut down, right?
Yeah.
As long as we find a DM and a time to play, like we can keep going with that content. But are there other games we're interested? I mean, Disintegration looks awesome. But I don't know if that's a game like, hey, we can talk about Disintegration and have something to talk about every week, right? It's not the Destiny, Warframe, or Division model.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's hard for you know, our games of service, like, is that phase come and gone now? Are we at the tail end where people are like, okay, we're not recuperating enough money in these types of games? Because you don't have the numbers like WoW does. I don't know, maybe you do. But, you know, we see like the models, like with Destiny getting away from Activision, how they're, you know, they've got their season passes. You know, we've seen the content that they've put out. We've seen like their big community puzzle that they did this last weekend that looked insane. You know, where do they go from there? They keep making content and doing their tiny updates, and they have one big update every 2 years. I don't know. Games as a service is a really interesting thing to cover because it's so new, and we have some like tent pole examples of what they can do. Mm-hmm. It's hard for people to be like, well, we can do this. I mean, it's like going from Fortnite to Apex, right?
Right.
And Apex, you know, the Respawn team was able to do something different, and they had a huge success because they had core gameplay, of course, that was good. And, you know, that's not something that Anthem had at the beginning. They didn't have that core fun loop. And, you know, maybe it's just hard to see where things are going to go.
Yeah.
And like if Anthem shuts down, it's like, I don't know, maybe we just, you know, talk about chess and we play chess online. I don't know.
Go ahead, Chris.
Anthem?
What's next for Anthem?
Yeah, what's in the pipe?
That's
people
the
who
question.
haven't been following it.
What's next for Anthem? That's a good question. I would like to know this as well. Because right now, after the season of Ice Tide, we don't have any information on what's coming next. We have Jason Schreier again broke that the team is working on an overhaul and a big update that we've just taken to calling 2.0. There's a lot of speculation in the community of what that is. People think that's going to be released next month. I think they're insane.
I'm going to jump in on that, though. Like, he didn't technically break it. He affirmed it. They, the team, BioWare, said, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to go into a tell, don't show mode, because then when we talk, it's just making everybody mad. So we're just going to go and work, and we're going to get this done. He confirmed that. He confirmed that beyond because people don't trust their word right now.
Well, it's a little different. So Chad Robertson, in the last blog update that they came out with a while ago, I could look up the date here in a minute.
It's been a long time.
But he said, I could look it up. Let's see, when was it? He said that they were going to go, you know, right before he left, you know, he's brought out this message that, hey, I'm taking off. Let's see, where is it? Sorry, I'm going to find it right here.
You're good.
So he says that, when does he say that? On the 17th of...
I think it was like...
On September 17th, they bring out their last blog post that they put out. Normally, the blog posts were supposed to be a once-a-month thing. He puts it out in September, and his words are, he says, hey, we're going dark. We'll show you when we have it ready. Here we go, right? So automatically, like there, I'm reading between the lines, okay, they're working on 2.0. Because 1.0, with the amount of issues that they were having with Frostbite, they weren't able to update, you know, we had issues with inscriptions from the beginning. We had issues with loot from the beginning, and they just weren't willing to change those things. Mm-hmm. My speculation is because it's on the back end, it just wasn't able to do that quickly enough after they built the game in 18 months. So they said, hey, we're going to go dark. We're going to do this. So in my mind, okay, they're working on 2.0. Then Jason says, hey, it's been confirmed. They're working on 2.0. We don't know how it's going to look, if it's going to be a new game, if it's just going to be a bunch of little updates. So as of right now, Ice Tide was the last thing that we knew about was going to happen. Today, they just extended that event to go on through February. So it was already a 60-day event. Now it's going to be a 90-day event, which sounds pretty insane for the amount of content that's in there. It's great for people that haven't jumped in. They can get in there, they can grind, they can get that cosmetic armor set. That's really the only thing that you need to get from there. There are some gear pieces that take you up from level 75 to a level 80 gear score, which is fine, but it's also not necessary for the highest level of content if you got a good enough build. So they're extending that. Cool. But after that, I don't think they have anything. Like, that's just my speculation. We haven't heard anything. Right. There's been zero talk of anything happening. Okay.
Nothing new about a PTR again, which we knew Ice Tide and some stuff from that because of the public test realm, things that were being tested. So
yeah, and they also told us that these seasonal events were going to happen in place of the Axe, but this was the last one. Ice Tide was going to be the last one that we had. So I don't know what's next. The only thing that I do know is 2.0 is probably going to be, shown off at EA Play this year. That's in June, the first week of June. And hopefully, it probably gets released sometime in September. This is just my speculation, not confirmed by anything. So it gives them that amount of time to work and then release in September, then go up against, one of the biggest games that's going to come out for the generation, which is fine. I don't think Anthem needs to compete against Cyberpunk, right? They really
or Marvel
be
Avengers, because that's kind of when we talk about that games as a service,
right? That
looter game, like now you're going to play as Thor versus flying around as Iron Man, or heck, you can even, because like a lot of people were drawn to Anthem for that. Hey, I've always wanted an Iron Man game,
Right. I don't think Avengers is going to be that. I really hope Square Enix, does good on their on that game. I know they've been catching a lot of flack just because the models look awful and terrible. But we've got that. It doesn't look like Chris Evans, right? So not my Captain America. But I don't think Anthem should be competing against anybody right now. They just need to put out a game and appease the fans that they have, and then hopefully by word of mouth, and that Redemption Phoenix story, word will get back that the game's in a state where you should come back. We don't need to compete against Destiny, because that's not going to happen. They're not going to compete against Warframe at this point. They need to put out a product that works, that functions. The car has to go down the street. The brakes have to work and the turn signals have to work, and then we can worry about it looking like a cool car and not a hatchback later, right? So let's just get that core built up now, and then we can have something that, hopefully it's successful and goes on in the future. This is all just my wild speculation, but based on things that we've seen, people that say that it's going to come out in the next month, that's crazy. There's no way that 2.0 comes out that soon. It's just not feasible, to where we need it. I know they made the game in 18 months, but they're going to need a little bit more time to make it to the point where it's playable and people actually enjoy playing the game.
I think the thing they need is that leadership, and we haven't technically seen it. Hopefully that's the case, because I think as a team could do anything within within 18 months if they're leaving meetings and decisions have been made. Okay guys, we're working on this and we're working on this. So, and you brought up No Man's Sky, and they did it over the course of several small updates and then eventually one big update. So it would be very concerning and disheartening if after Ice Tide ends there's just a long gap of nothing before 2.0, because it'd be if the strength in it is is there a reason for me to go log in and play for the fan who's enjoying it, because you don't want to lose that base before 2.0, because you want that base to be your biggest rallying cry, saying this is what we wanted it to be. Chris, you look like you got a thought.
That's not how 14 did it. So as an example of people who rebirth games successfully, it doesn't have to be done that way.
No.
14 let it die. It died. 1.0 went all the way into the ground and then came back.
They shut it down for a while. And then they had beta tests and things like that. So, you're 100% right. That could end up giving people a break and then an anticipation,
Yeah, I think burning people out on mediocre content, if that's what you can deliver while you're working on a 2.0, is a risk. So if all you can deliver is mediocre, there is a value in saying, go play Cyberpunk, have a blast. We don't, and then we'll be on the other side of that. If you could add something, if they were listening to your podcast and you could speculate at what you want that 2.0 to have, what does get changed?
Yeah, so I think I have a couple answers for this. I think mainly I want to see, that BioWare narrative that everyone's always talked about. I want to see that actually matter in the game, because currently there in the beginning of the game we did have some interaction with a lot of NPCs, which was done fantastic. I mean, I think they took the feedback from Mass Effect Andromeda, their facial capture, and they just blew it out of the water. Anthem has some of the best facial capture, like, and mocap, like, I've seen. Right? It just looks amazing. But none of those interactions ever really mattered to you as a player. Like, they have factions in the game, but none of that mattered. There wasn't like, hey, if I go this way with this faction member, I'm going to unlock this, or I'm going to get this special quest, or I'm going to get this armor piece, or I'm going to get this gear piece. You know, that's the kind of thing that makes a player invested in their decisions, right? They didn't have that. So I would like to see something more like that built out into 2.0, whatever that is. I mean, that involves a lot with, you got to bring a lot of people back in to do motion capture, and you got to do your voiceover work. But I mean, it's BioWare. This is what you're known for. This is what you do. You do story, you do character, right? That's what everyone's been telling me this whole time, and I just haven't seen it. Like this little story that we have, I really enjoyed the story of Anthem, but we need to see something, more definitive that actually makes a difference in the game. We need to see more RPG elements.
Mm-hmm, thank you.
We need to see this. Yeah, we need to see the stat sheet. I need to know that if I equip this weapon, what it's going to do to my elemental damage without just guessing. I don't want to just equip it, go jump out there, shoot a thing, and then try to do the calculations in my head. I mean, it's an RPG. It's a role-playing game. Give me those things that make me make informed decisions. Like the 2 up arrows that say, hey, this is green, this is red, so one's better, one's bad. That's not enough for an RPG. We want the depth there so that we feel like, hey, this build actually matters. Or, hey, you can go out and make this build. Currently, I can have this build that does tons of damage. And when people say, hey, what build did you have? You said, I don't know. This is the thing I found randomly. And if you can get it, cool. But chances are you're not going to get the same rolls and inscriptions that I have.
Right.
So we need ways to make that stuff matter. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, other than, I can list like a billion things that it needs to have. But I really want the story, and the RPG stuff has to matter. And that's one way I think you get a lot of people back into Anthem, because that stuff, that's what keeps you playing the game. You want to see those numbers go up.
I've always described Anthem's progression system, because I have too long for them to lean into the RPG side of it, is that once you hit level 29 and down, you're getting XP. Every time you go out and play, you're making progress. So like, even if you didn't get a crazy drop, okay, cool. Once you hit level 30, XP it goes into this alliance system, but that alliance system is dependent on the fact that you're playing with friends and your friends list is playing. If it's not, you're not getting any coin week over week. It's a real cool system that unfortunately isn't being executed on because of the state of Anthem. But I always said that once you hit level 30, you go to work, and then at the end of the day, you roll to see if you get paid. And that was essentially the first, RNG progression is fine. It's not like, it's exciting. Whenever you get that god roll, or whenever you get that gun or that weapon or that piece of gear, you're like, yes, this is really making me stronger. Awesome. But at the end of the day, if you don't get that, and you continue not to get that, and your friend over there is like, why does he keep getting the thing that I need? We're doing the same work. Why is he getting paid? I'm not. Like, you have a system already baked in, XP. Like, give me the ability. Like, have you ever played Phantasy Star Online?
I have not, no.
So they have an interesting system in which that, you get drops. Anthem, you get drops. You take those drops, and you can feed those drops to your gun or your weapon or your gear, and then that becomes more powerful. And I've always thought like it would be poised, because people would complain about the colors, like, oh no, I'm getting a green, like, and then all right, we'll take green out. Like, no, make green worth it. Make green worth 1/1000th of progress. A blue 1/100th. Purple 1/10th, and an epic, so it's like all of a sudden you're like taking these things, and you're like, well, I got these embers, let me just infuse them as XP into my stuff. So you're like, well, I got drops. They weren't the drop I wanted, but now I can start to customize it the way that I want to play, and that's what I think hooks people.
And it really comes down to like, you want to feel like your time invested is respected by the developer, right?
Yeah.
Like, we playing Diablo 3 past 70. It's like, okay, you're gaining Paragon levels. there is still a number going up, and it's stupid that we're like, hey, I just want to see this number go from 1 to 2, right? But you get that sense of progression, and if you're not getting that, because like you said, the alliance system gives you coin, but that's if you're trying to grind for coin to get random cosmetic items in the feature store that rotate every 4 or 3 days. And that's just like, you're still gambling on whether you can buy the thing that you actually want or not. So then you have to wait on their time until that thing comes around. So it's just not respecting that time. And like you said, Phantasy Star did it. Like, WoW had the legendary items. I think that's what they were called. Artifact weapons that you could feed into it. And it has a different skill tree for that weapon, right? I mean, there's things that you can do. I mean, this obviously would take a ton of work on the back end.
Yeah, it's
something that you can do in the 2 weeks that I normally think things can happen. But you have to feel like you're progressing. You have to feel like your time is being rewarded, because that's what all these developers are vying for. It's not for the $60. Like, sure, that's a bonus, but it's our time and the opportunity for us to spend more money in that system, right? And for us to do that, to make that conversion, we need to be there. So you have to feel like your time is rewarded.
Yeah, you make it to where that dollar that you're giving to the store is you thanking the devs because you're having so much daggum fun. You're like, I love my time here. Yeah, because that's one of the things that drives Warframe's revenue model is the community is like, yes, this is great. This is what I wanted. Thank you. And I don't have to, but it becomes a community gift to the developer, as opposed to feeling like the developer's like always trying to go through my pockets.
Right. And talk about a game that's gone from something that it was definitely not in the beginning to where it is now, and to them listening to the community. And like Warframe players, like, I mean, they love that game because they feel like they've been listened to, right? I'm sure they've had their ups and downs with a bunch of things that have happened, but props to that team. This game that came out with the launch of the PS4 and everyone's like, what is this, to where it is now?
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing work from a developer that's listening to their group of, to their players.
How does Anthem do that for new players? I mean, the cost of getting into Anthem has been at some all-time lows. So like if you're just looking for your kind of like dollar per hour, it doesn't have to be that engaging of a game to cover its cost right now, because it is a very low barrier to entry. But if I know that I'm getting on to the next big thing, and I know that they're secretly in their workshop working on 2.0, but like you said, the current event is running a little bit longer, and then there may not be more breadcrumbs after that. Why would I give them my time right now?
See, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me this question because I don't have a good answer for it, right? Because I don't know. Like, I enjoy the gameplay. I think if you were to pick up this game for $10, $5 anywhere, I mean, it's cheap everywhere, right? You would have fun playing it. Would it keep you engaged for like the next 8 months? Probably not. But if you buy it for $10 and you get a good, 10 hours out of it and you see what it has to offer, like, I wouldn't encourage you at this point to go through and grind all the way to, level 960 or whatever it is right now. Because I don't think
960.
Because I don't think there's, I mean, you could do that, but we've talked about all these other games that we're playing right now. Like, I wish I could say, hey, yeah, you need to play this game because it's a must play. But at the point that we're at right now, not knowing what's going to happen, because we don't know if any of the content that we have right now is going to transfer over. We don't know if it's going to be a new game. We don't know if it's going to be an update, right? Like, I would hope cosmetics and stuff that we spent money on is going to transfer over to whatever 2.0 is, but I don't know what that is. And I would hate to tell someone to go, like, spend all this money, go spend all this time, and then just have that progress wiped. Because I just don't know what's going to happen. So I don't want to be responsible for anyone doing that. So I'm not going to answer this question. I don't know what happens next. And I wish I did. I hope they do. And I'm guessing that they do because they're developing for it. But I just don't know right now.
So I'll pivot it. So I come to you and I say, I'm doing it whether or not you recommend me to.
Okay.
I'm just doing it. And it's not going to be your fault if I end up hating it, because I'm doing it. How does a new player get started getting the most out of this game with what there is to do now versus back when it launched?
Yeah, so luckily right now, I mean, the story, I really enjoyed the story of Anthem, and that's the first thing that you're going to jump into. There's some great character interactions. There's a fun little story arc. There's a fun twist at the end, and it even sets up something at the end of the game, whether there'll be payoff on that or not. I hope there will be. So if you were just to spend $10 on this game, you'll get a fun little narrative experience that's that's worth that. I think the cosmetic, the music, the animations in that first part, I think it's well worth $10 to jump in and just experience that, just to be able to say, hey, I've done it. I experienced Anthem. I know what it's about. And now, whatever happens in 2.0, even if you're not at the highest level, that's probably not going to matter when, a giant reset happens, right? When we go from like the Destiny 1 to the Destiny 2 of Anthem, like all that stuff probably isn't going to matter. You'll be able to jump in. You'll be right back where everyone else is. So go in, experience the story, because it is a fun story. Like it's not the HBO that Casey Hudson wanted it to be when he, was first talking about Anthem, but you know what? You're going to get a fun story out of it. 10-hour story. And I think that's worth the price that it is right now. I mean, there's no reason not to. I mean, you could pay $15 on EA's service and get it for a month, and you beat the game, and then, you just wait to see what comes next. So there is fun to be had if you're a new player. And then if you want to jump into the new story, into the new seasons that they have, like, you have to do that now because the last season that we have is only going to last till the end of February. But you can do that at any level. You can jump in and you can start that after you complete a couple missions in the story. So that's something that you can experience. It doesn't add on to the story, the current season that we are in now. There's a little bit of Cortex entries in there, so it doesn't expand this story, insane, by an insane amount. So you're not missing out on the story if you're missing out on these seasonal events. More of the Cataclysm, you'll miss out on a little bit of that, but who knows? Maybe they'll bring the Cataclysm back just to kind of appease people that have missed that. So, enjoy the story, jump in, have some fun, and then, wait till 2.0 comes back. Don't get super invested. Don't spend all the time grinding for all that things. Plus, it's not that hard to reach max level right now with the way that they have their seasonal content. So, I don't know if that's a good answer. I don't know if that's the best answer, but it's hard for me to say, hey, guys, come jump in. It's the best that it's been. It's the best that it's been, but I don't know. It's the best that it's been.
What cherished memory? I mean, let's say the server shuts down tomorrow. Surprise. Sorry. What's the cherished memory that you're going to get to carry forward that you got to do, you got to be a part of, or you got to witness, or you got to watch streams of, that you're going to look back on fondly forever and ever? I mean, there are games that I don't play anymore that I loved. What is that moment?
I guess there's a couple things. First of all, it's like, just starting a community and having people be around for that long that you just become friends with, right? That's always like the generic answer. It's the friends that you made along the way. And we've made a great community of people that, we play games with, we talk to all the time in our Discord, and it's just fun having that community. And, a lot of those people have left Anthem and have stopped playing Anthem, but they stick around because, we have good conversations with each other and it's just fun to talk to. But I think the biggest thing that we did as a community, we put on a stronghold race during one of the betas, because that's one of the things that we were excited about. Hey, there's going to be this content that we can compete against each other. There's no PvP in the game.
Yeah.
This was back before leaderboards were even thought of. Let's say, hey, let's put on this race. Let's put a bunch of teams together, see who can complete this stronghold, as fast as possible. And this is back before we even had access to masterwork items, because in the beta, we only had up until Epic. So actually putting together a build was interesting, because you had to take all these, low-level items, figure out what works best, and then you had to execute. And that was a lot of fun. We had, the race at the end came down to the last couple of seconds of taking down the Tyrant Mine. And it was just, we had Devin and Mike casted the thing while I ran the back end, switching cameras between the two teams, and they're racing. And just hearing them talk and yell at each other on shoot the thing and pick up the thing, it was just a lot of fun. I mean, those kind of events are fun to watch as a consumer, because it gets intense, and it's, a game that you love. It's people that people that you've been talking to about a game for a year. And it just, that was probably one of the best memories that I had, just because it was a fun time. It was like watching the Invitational for, the Warcraft, when they do their races. I mean, yeah. It's technical stuff, and you see people, make it or break it at the end. And we had some of the biggest content creators for Anthem at that time, in the race. And, that was probably the funnest thing, because it was just, that was an adrenaline rush that I wish other developers would kind of get on board with. I guess it was a lot of fun to watch.
I would love to see some of that stuff, some of that baked into the game itself. We did that out at FanFest for Final Fantasy XIV, where we would race against another team, and that was set up all manual. And so there they are, and they're sitting across from you, and you're in the dungeon, and you can't see where they are, and they can't see where you are. And I always thought, like, how cool would it be if in the game we're like, yeah, let's do a race, and you would team up, and then you'd be like, all right, and then like in the sidebar you would be like, oh, they've made progress, and then doing stuff could try to impact their progress, right? So you brought up a real strong point when, you know, that the game doesn't have PvP. One of the things that from a content creation perspective, especially around the RPG, when games don't have some form of competition, they don't necessarily bring in the, you know, like lots of content in that regard. You get the builds, you get the mindsets, but you don't get that nature, which creates that kind of that tense drama. And I thought, like, and I'm still in the camp, like, I believe that Anthem should have PvP. I don't necessarily believe that it needs to be like competitive in terms of I'm shooting you. It's like the leaderboards is a form of PvP, races is a form of PvP, ways that we can somewhat like just bragging rights in that regard. It's like, oh my goodness, you know, and then and then you log in and you're like, how did Brian do that stronghold at that time? Or look at his DPS numbers, like as a way from a friend's perspective, like, all right, let me see if I can't beat his score. I have, like, they have PvP in Peggle. Like when I log in and play Peggle, literally I'm like, all right, you son of a, you know, I'm going to beat your score. And it's like, and it's just like every now and then you just check in. And me and my wife, I think, played Peggle for an hour one Saturday morning with the kids until we crushed a new high record. And then, you know, and then they'll log in and they'll see if they can't beat it again. And it's just like, it's that, it drives us. It's a human thing. It doesn't necessarily, I think people always think of PvP as that head to head, you know, and if you don't have that Twitch reaction, then that might not be something that speaks to you. But
and I think like in the beginning I was pretty against the idea of this game having PvP in the beginning, just because we see the balance issues, like especially with like 4 javelins. If you go into a PvP mode and you have 4 javelins, one of the javelins can shoot its ultimate while it's flying. Mm-hmm. The others you have to be hovering, you know, and then you take hovering into account. It's like, okay, if you're flying everywhere, you're just kind of a sitting duck as you're flying around. So I was pretty against it. Plus balance issues. You see what balance has to do with, you know, Destiny, and everything's always broken, and there's always this one thing that you're chasing. It's a tough job, right? Yeah. It's tough to do. So I was like, I don't care. I don't want it. You know, leave it out. At this point, you're like, yeah, sure, try something, right? You know, make some content that'll get more people into the game, because what do you have to lose right now, right? Like at this point, I don't think anyone's going to care that if this one gun is broken in PvP, right? You want people in there doing something in your game. Yeah. So
I think, in fact, what's interesting and relates to a lot of this, and the conversation's not being had, and I'm really curious to see what happens in April. But Borderlands 3 is rumored that they're working on a battle royale mode. They're bringing in microtransactions for, I think, a lot of the people were saying a lot of the sales numbers were guaranteed copies that Epic secured just so they would launch in the Epic Game Store. And then when you go out and look at the community, like, they're like, well, why am I playing this game? Like, even people who are like, I love Borderlands, it's, you know, Borderlands 3 is not actually doing as hot as people like. People went and played it, they enjoyed it, and then they left. And that's the game didn't have that long-term traction and that grab that a lot of these other games have. And so it's all rumor and speculation, but it's interesting to see, because they delivered a fun experience that people just touched it and move on, like almost like a single player game, etc. And so I'm curious to see when you say just try anything, the people who are still actively looking at Borderlands 3 are like, I don't know, what is it, like, sure, like, do it. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off and see if this is good or bad. Like, yeah, I want something to do in the game.
And Borderlands is hard because Borderlands 3 is just more Borderlands 2, right? And that game was never like the live service game, right? And for them to be like, well, you know, because what do? Borderlands fans want Borderlands, right? But then I guess they're like, maybe we don't want Borderlands. Maybe we want more of this.
All of a sudden, 7 years later, you're like, oh, like what I thought I liked, you know, what I liked in 2012 was great, but now I'm like, I would like something more. And so, yeah, it's like, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that franchise this year alone. Go ahead.
And it's so hard to do that in the gaming industry now, because things are shifting so much. Like games that are being developed right now for something that's like, you know, hey, this is really popular right now. I mean, you look at Blizzard, and they finally did their thing in Hearthstone, their, you know, auto battler. Mm-hmm. It took Blizzard like that thing was built in their backyard. Dota was built in their backyard or league or whatever, and it takes them so long to like finally make a decision to get on top of that. By the time they do it, we've all kind of moved on, and it's like,
and you kind of miss the wave.
And you miss the wave, but if you don't try, then you miss it altogether, right? So I mean, you got to try something. Would like a battle royale work in Anthem? Probably not. I don't think that would work. But you know what? If you don't try it, it's not going to work either.
I just love a horde mode. Just like put me out there and just throw everything you got at me, and then let's just survive.
And Anthem has some lore that they have these giant ships that go out on the ocean, and they have javelins chained to them so that these javelins don't fly away and abandon the ship.
Mm-hmm.
That's a perfect spot for a horde mode. First of all, you're out on the ocean, so you don't have to create massive amounts of geometry.
Yeah,
and you're tied to this one point on this ship, and you could throw turrets, you could throw ballistae on the ship, and do something, and just have wave after wave of you defending the ship as it crosses the ocean. It's something that you could do. It'd only take like 2 weeks for like 4 developers to put this together. I'm sure of it. There's opportunities. There's opportunities to do that. But then again, it's like you probably don't do that now, right? You wait till 2.0.
Yeah.
Launch
with a lot of content. Launch with just like, okay, here's your stats, and here's it, and it works. Here's the RPG. Here's all these new strongholds. Here's a raid. Here's this horde mode. Like, here's all of this stuff that you have wanted, as opposed to, don't trickle it out. Like, make it so that you're like, like, what? I'm a kid in a candy store. This is going to hold me over for a while you work on the next drop.
And then of course we come to this, we're at the end of a generation, the start of a new one.
Yeah.
So then what do they do there? It's like, okay, so we don't know, like the Xbox, the Series X, they're going to be but we don't know how that works with all the games that they're putting out now and the games that are going forward.
We do know how it works. A lot of people haven't, if you haven't been playing on following Xbox, it might seem a little like strange, but it's just the Xbox. Like when they say family of devices, a game on Xbox today is a game on Xbox X, Series X or whatever. Right,
but a game on Xbox Series X is not going to be a game on the Xbox.
No, it is actually going to be a game on the Xbox.
For some amount of time, they
plan
all things being
and that's for first,
but there will be a day.
Party.
There will be a day when Xbox Ones get dropped, just like iPhones get dropped. There's a day where you go to install an OS and it says, "Why are you still on a 4?"
Here's the thing.
And that's the end.
I disagree with that. There's not going to be a day where that happens, because there's a system in place that they're already testing. It's called xCloud. And then all of a sudden you just have xCloud on that old Xbox, and it's running on the cloud as long as you have internet.
There could be a paradigm shift.
But I think xCloud is for a different application though, right? xCloud is when you're out and about. I don't know if the xCloud is going to be like the Stadia of Microsoft.
They're doing it as a transition too. Square Enix as a company is developing cloud-only games that will only run in a cloud environment and will not be able and not run on hardware. And so that is what's coming now. That's probably 5 to 10 years, 15 years, because there's so many other hurdles. But that is what's coming. We're at a precipice of a massive paradigm shift. And there are some gamers that are rightfully scared because ownership questions come into play. But to your point regarding this generational shift, like, do you wait and hold off on 2.0 for the next generation hardware at a minimum?
Right, exactly.
Chris says no.
No, Xbox already confirmed there will be another Xbox after the Series X.
No, I'm not saying hardware's going away.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just saying, like, why buy it?
Is non-zero. There's going to be time where new consoles are still coming out and streaming services are already stable. And there will be an overlap. And that overlap will not be months. It will be years.
Right. And that's what I'm saying, that for the person on the Xbox, like the old OG Xbox, they could say you can play this in xCloud. It's like, so it's this version or xCloud and up in that regards, and that's going to help transition people who don't have the money to buy hardware. Don't like, all right, like, cool, I can keep playing it. I'm just going to have to make sure I have internet, and if I want to play it locally, then I need to have hardware, and that's going to be because if there's a market to buy hardware, they're going to sell you hardware. But I don't think we're going to see an industry, once especially the cloud is more prevalent, where they're selling hardware at a loss.
Yeah, and that's the difference. It'll be interesting to see what Anthem does for that. Like, console-wise, I don't really care about the consoles, right? Because I'm playing on PC, so whatever, you guys figure that out on your own. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with that, because it's It's a new generation. What happens? And maybe they release in September. Those things get put out, and there's just a patch for, hey, now you can play this on PlayStation 5. Now you can play this on the Series X or whatever. But either way, like, we're going to enter this period where we don't know anything for a long time. And it's going to be like after EA Play 2017, where it's just, all right, it's time to speculate again on what the future is. So,
yeah, I think for me, if I've put my list and the things that I want, you hit it pretty much out of the park. The one thing I'd add is crossplay. If they were able to sit here, if I could play with like Xbox and PlayStation and PC players, and we're all just enjoying the game, and it doesn't matter what platform we're on, that would be something really, really good, especially for the community. When you start taking a small, a fairly small community, dividing them across 3 platforms, and then they can't interact together, like I think that would end up helping out a lot, because then all of a sudden you see more people playing, more people like in the bay, more people that you're getting matched with. It ends up being a better experience overall. And so hopefully, I don't know if that's something they patch into the current. I think that might be something that if they are, let's say, launching a 2.0 in 2020, that would be something I think hopefully would be a core feature of the 2.0 relaunch. But,
yeah, hopefully Sony will stop making all this crossplay stuff impossible.
Well, they have
Sony all the time. That's Sony.
Well, they
have.
I know
and they've started making it where that they finally said, "Hey, go for it." So now he's got to wait on developers, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the other thing. How now developers
all of this in a $10 game.
And I want it done in 2 weeks.
we can thank Rocket League for getting that whole crossplay thing started.
Rocket League started it. Fortnite brought it to the national attention.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden the narrative shifted to Sony won't let you. Like, everybody over here is having fun. Oh, you're on Sony? Oh, that sucks. Because we're all here having a good time. So that was always...
Devs did a good job of pointing it out. What's his name over at Bethesda? Literally just straight up said, I don't know, ask Sony. Like, I mean, there were just multiple media moments where they just put them on the coals and said, you can bear the heat or you can let us play. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see Anthem either way as of today at $10. Like, if you've been on the fence, it seems like an easy thing to jump in. It'll be interesting to see where it goes from here.
All right. So, Steve, where can people find you?
So you can find us we're on Twitter, Freelancer Codex over on Twitter. We're there all the time. We'll chat with you. We'll talk to you. We'll say, hey, you can tell us it's a dead game, and I'll judge your jokes based on if they're original or not. And you can find us at freelancercodex.com. You can find all of our podcasts on all major platforms, Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And that's just Freelancer Codex. So we'll still be there until the servers shut down. We'll be there. We'll talk about this game. We enjoy talking about it. I mean, it's something that has a ton of potential. And, I know a lot of people are like, well, you could be playing lots of other games. And it's true. We do play a lot of other games. And it just kind of makes you think, like, what if this game had this? So we'll talk about it until it shuts down.
Chris, where can people find us? Where are we working on?
Oh, here on YouTube. I know that we're finishing up some stuff in 14, and I've been getting back into WoW a bit more. And we got a big year ahead of us. Hopefully Temtem's interesting. Hopefully New World's interesting. Hopefully Final Fantasy VII is as good as we expect, and hopefully Cyberpunk's good. I mean, 2020 is a year of a lot of long-term projects finally coming to fruition, assuming no more delays. So it could be a big delivery year for everybody.
All right. So with that, everybody, for tuning in live, watching us on the archive on YouTube, or listening to this in audio form, thanks for tuning in. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Be sure to follow Steve and the whole Freelancer Codex crew. Check out their podcast if you're interested in Anthem, and if it is Reborn, it will be interesting. So we'll have to see where this falls. This will be a fun podcast to look back on in retrospective, to say, like, all right, like, we kicked off 2020 much like we did 2019, not knowing what the future of Anthem's going to hold. So, hopefully that will be that question will get answered this year for many. But anyway, for Work to Game, my name is Brian.
Who's next week? Week?
I don't know.
I forgot.
Sorry,
I do.
It is me three. It's like, thank you, Chris. Chris, why don't you tell us who's...
Last week was Rook, which was a blast. Next week is Mithri, so let's do it.
We're going to have Me3 on, and I'm looking forward to talking to him. I got into his videos on YouTube for crafting and gathering and how to make money. and so that was always kind of helpful. And then I got to a point in 14 where I don't need money, so then I was like,
He
okay.
plays a lot of stuff now.
Yeah, he does. He plays a lot of games. I think you have to. I think if you're going to do content creation, it's I don't know if there is that like one game that essentially rules them all.
You can do over 100 podcasts on just Anthem.
100, yeah, 100, yeah.
That's only the first 7-minute trailer. So
On the
I mean,
100.
if we can do that, anyone can make anything, right? So
Yeah,
I mean,
so if you've always been thinking about getting into content creation, you should do so because anything and everything is possible. Anyway, now I'll conclude. I guess the classic one. For Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
am I supposed to say something?
It's up to you.
My name's Steve.
Best one
That's our
yet.
favorite part.
Thank you guys.
Oh,
Have a good day.
thanks
We'll
so
see you
much.
next time.
Take care.